Workers World lost a friend this week. A friend to the Workers World production team, a friend to Cape Town TV, a friend to community media. Rest in peace, Sia Bulela boy. At Workers World Productions, we shared the office with Sia, Cape Town TV's starter office at Community House, a foundational member of the beginning of the cohort of what would become skilled community media practitioners. He's left a legacy at Cape Town TV and with the Workers World Labour Show. All our condolences to Sia's wife and his two beautiful children. You will always be in our hearts. Welcome to the Workers World Labour Show. I'm your host, Helga Jansen-Daubia. And a special welcome to Michaela Miller, standing by at the Labour Show news desk. Over the past year, we looked at COVID-19, the lockdowns, and how it has impacted on various groups of workers, communities. In today's show, we look at the situation of homeless people and how they've coped under the severe conditions of COVID-19. With us via our Zoom studio, we'd like to welcome Carlos Mquita from the Homeless Action Committee. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Thank you.
We're also joined by Kashifa Ahmad, certainly no stranger to the Labour Show, from the Housing Assembly. Welcome, Kashifa.
Thanks, Kom, for having me on your show.
And all the way in a very cold KZN, we're joined by Sandile and Sibande from Abashlali. Welcome to Sandile.
Power!
Power indeed. Thank you and welcome to all of you. Before we get into our discussion, let's take a look at an insert produced by the Workers World Media Productions editorial team.
I've been homeless for plus minus 9 years.
Close to 5 years.
I've been on the streets now for just over 6 years, going on 7.
U-Turn, Mess and Streetscapes released a study called The Cost of Homelessness last November.
Approximately 14,000 people that are homeless on the street, which is a good estimate, I think.
14,500 homeless, 2,500 in shelters. So that leaves about 12,000 who are on the streets every night.
Children that's been raised in this very same environment. Their mothers and their fathers look after them, even though they stay in this environment.
Why does someone land up on the street? U-Turn, we believe it's when two things coincide. It's not just a lack of income.
It's been on and off. There was times I got a job when I worked and I could get a place, but then I'd go on short time and I would be able to cover my rent and I'd just end up back to square one again.
Because 32% of our population are unemployed, they have no income.
From 2002, I'm on the street. I never get work. I depend to park the cars to get something to eat.
But it's when you have a lack of income coupled with your broken social support networks. You don't have family or friends that can look after you. You don't have the savings behind you that can actually keep you in some sort of accommodation.
People don't end up on the street because they are substance abusers necessarily. They're on the street and then they use substances, because how else do you survive?
I was on drugs a year ago because it was the only way to survive. I was not used to it. I didn't do it all my life. But when I landed up on the streets, how do I survive? I mean, how do I even face every morning when I know where I used to be and now I have to go dig in a dustbin?
Non-contributing, it's just you've just given up. And they're like, look, there's 20 people living under this roof. I'm sorry, but we can't look after you, can't free ride off us anymore.
My mother's side, since I'm not working, we are struggling too much. So I end up to tell her she must sell the house and then go back to Eastern Cape with my child. I will try to find out her work. But I didn't find out her work till now. Now I end up on the street.
The city was asked to provide some sort of temporary accommodation for people who are on the street as per the President's instruction. And so the City of Cape Town went for a large facility, one facility for the whole of Cape Town.
For the period of the declaration of a lockdown, a person refusing to be evacuated from any place subject to lockdown may be evacuated by an enforcement officer to a temporary shelter.
So Robin was a 39-year-old sex worker. She was homeless. We got these video clips of her talking about, not wanting to go to Strandfontein. But we were told by the monitors that, it looks civil on the clips, but before that, it wasn't quite as civil. It's like, you need to go and you need to go.
They just come with the van, reinforcements, some of the guys with 2 busters, just say, come, let's go, you must come, but by force. We don't have time to take our clothes, anything. Look, I still have the same clothes, underwear, it's not right.
And this is what we, not only from what happened to Robin and what we saw in the clips, but also other reports that we got from other sex workers saying that, threatening, if you don't go to Strandfontein, we'll go to Polsmoor, if you don't go, and, look what happened.
Now, 6 months in prison for what?
Is that allowed, sir? But why are we supposed to get locked up if we're not there? Is it our right, most?
Like one billion with everybody inside of Cape Town City and whatever for the virus, which is more risky. You see?
So you have a reason to be outside on the street?
Yeah, I'm monitoring this.
Do you have paperwork?
Yeah, we can ask her for the paperwork.
We don't have rights here. We don't have rights. The other day they shot us with rubber bullets.
Welcome back. In this week's top stories, the COSATU-affiliated SACTU settles for its 2021 and 2022 wage negotiations, securing 5.5% wage hike for South African wage non-woven textile sector. And CCMA upholds dismissal of spa workers in Gqeberha for violating PICOT rules. All this and more, do stay tuned for the full bulletin. In studio to start off this week's discussion, here's Helga.
Welcome back. Sis Sandile, let's start with you. You are all the way in KZN. And as we're talking now, there's been a weather warning for this week. Give us a sense of how homelessness is expressed in where you work, where Abashlali works, and who is it that ends up on the streets that have no roof over their head?
I'm used to introduce myself before I speak.
Please do.
Yeah, my name is Zandile Nsibande from Abahlali Basemjondolo. I'm the member of the National Council because within Abahlali, we have local council, those are the leaders from the branches. We have provincial council, those are the leaders from the provinces, since we have KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, Mpumalanga, and Gauteng. So those are provincial leaders. And then we have national leadership, which involves the leaders from all these provinces, and we made it a national council. So within the movement, our main objectives are land, housing, and dignity, because we know that poor people have been excluded on RDPs. Why I say they are excluded? They are excluded because I would like to talk about eThekwini municipality. eThekwini municipality, they built about, they delivered about 200,000 houses. But none of us, none of our members had been benefited on this. Why? It's because they're giving the houses to the members of the ANC. If you don't have an ANC card, you are excluded. If sometimes they're even selling the houses to the people who are professional nurses, soldiers, SAPS. There's a lot of corruption, and the reason of homelessness. Maybe you must allude to the reason of homelessness. The reason of homelessness is because there's a lack of rural development. So everyone after matric decide to go to the city looking for green pastures. Then when you're coming to the city, you'll find out that we are working under a contract basis where you can sign a 3 months contract, 6 months contract. Then after that, you become unemployed. But during this time of pandemic, it's worse. Many people lost their jobs, especially those who are on the tourism industry. The hotels had been closed. So those people find themselves on the streets. But as a movement, that's why we say we use the unused land for the people who were working. Now they're unemployed, they can't afford to pay the rent. We don't take the land which is written that it's somebody's land. We're just using the unused land, and the people are occupying that land. It's not us who are telling the people to occupy. It's their homelessness which is telling them to occupy that land.
Thank you, Sisandile. Thank you for that. Carlos, I'd like to bring you in here. Sisandile, of course, describes a mass movement in search of economic pastures from the rural areas into the urban areas. And she's saying that there's a lack of rural development. Is this a contributing factor? And give us a sense of those contributing factors to homelessness.
I think it's the biggest contributing factor at the moment. You know, when people ask me what is the solution for homelessness, I say homes, because that is what it is. And unfortunately, in Cape Town especially, we have the situation where even our shelters that we have are what I would call apartheid shelters. They were all opened about 30 years ago, 20 years ago. And when the ANC came into power, it was as if they thought there was going to be we were going to have a land of milk and honey. So they didn't actually invest in any extra accommodation for people that might be urbanized. Of course, we know that it didn't happen. The land of milk and honey is not here. So we have this huge backlog because in the meantime, we've had other things happening like COVID, for example, that has also got people to be unemployed and homeless. And so we're sitting with a situation in Cape Town, which is slightly better than it is in other provinces in that. And I say this, as I always say to the city of Cape Town, don't be proud of something where you are the best of the worst. You know, You should be proud of being the best of the best. Unfortunately, in Cape Town, we are proud of being the best of the worst. And so we say, okay, well, nobody else has got the amount of shelters we have. It's all true. But the fact of the matter is we still, despite having those shelters, we don't have accommodation for at least 12,000 of the people living on the street. We've got 14,000, and here I must specify what Zandile was saying is she's taking into consideration, which in Cape Town the politicians don't take into account, and that is that people that are living in shacks, as far as I'm concerned, in a lot of the shacks are homeless. These are people that don't have homes.
Carlos, let me just, before I get to Kashifa, you're talking about 14,000 homeless people as per the costs of homelessness report. Yet, there are only 2,500 beds, shelter beds available. And I'm sure that as we talk, that 14,000 has increased because of COVID.
Yeah, I mean, that was done prior to COVID. That study was done prior to COVID. Now, and that 14 does not include, as I say, whereas Zandile was including the people that are living in shacks, etc., as homeless people in Cape Town. We are talking about people that were living in homes that are in suburban areas that have now moved into shelters because they can't afford to have a home, as well as the people that are living on the street. So the study showed prior to COVID, those people numbered 14,000, and obviously with COVID, it's above that. The city is still, the last figure that I heard come from Dr. Badruddin was 8,000. So they've actually escalated by 4,000 compared to the previous figures. But we're not even at that number yet. And then you must understand that the city has got a campaign that says, give responsibly.
Carlos, I want to get to that give responsibly campaign. It is definitely another part of our conversation, but I have to bring Kashifa in here before we go to our break. Kashifa, the housing assembly, give us a sense. Carlos and both Sindile have kind of started to structure that our perceptions of who is homeless is actually not correct. Tell our viewers who is homeless in this time of COVID.
You know what both comrades were saying is correct. But you know, as housing assembly, what we've seen under COVID, so many people have lost their jobs, and so many people have decided that they can't pay the rent. So what is important now for them is to put something on the table, and that is not even important now because they don't even have. So what we've seen, people who stay in rental houses, some people even who have bank houses, most of them, quite a lot of people families have lost their homes through that. So we see people as occupying pieces of land. And, you know, by occupying, you're also homeless because you don't have a proper home. But, you know, staying in a shack, that becomes then your home also. So what we've seen also is, you know, people staying in these houses also, law enforcement also then becomes then the ones who still breaking down these structures, and people become then also homeless. Yeah. And you know, I have some families even that's still even phoning today that, you know, we got a eviction notice from the court saying that even we have to move. There's people that is stressing currently now that they need to move out of these homes because the landlord wants their home. So people end up on the road. So it's a lot of people that becomes homeless.
Kashifa, can I ask you just to press pause there, because I do want to come back to the issue of law enforcement and the powers that they've been given. To you at home, don't go away. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, we're talking COVID-19 and homelessness. Kashifa, before the break, you were giving us a sense of the stresses, as you call them, that people, both tenants and people who own their homes, are going through currently.
So what we've seen, I think we're sitting even on a time bomb. Now, you know, the city don't build enough houses for our community due to corruption and all these things that's happening within these projects that they are running. Now, because of the overcrowdedness, and you know, we have 3 to 4 generations staying in a home. And you know, parents become now also tired of you because the space is full now. You know, you have your children and so many children also in that household. So the burden becomes so much. What we've seen is people are living off the pension of their parents also, and parents can just take so much. And our children ended up also now to move out also. But now you see what happened with these occupations also, where our youngsters and you know, not just youngsters, as elderly also. So when they occupy, sometimes they don't have the full batch of material that they can build these structures. But then once your structure is even halfway, and not just halfway, some of it's even complete, and then, you know, law enforcement do their rounds, and then they will break these structures down because the structures are empty and you don't have a bed or anything in it yet, because, you know, you also have to find out means and ways to put something in there. But, you know, with our community, and because you don't have much, you try and see what you can get, even by family and friends, just to fill your house also, because we don't have money that's laying around. So they don't consider those type of things. They just break down. And, you know, it's the way they do it is a very forceful and a brutal way in the way they are doing
Thank you, Kashifa. I want to bring Carlos into this because the role of law enforcement in enforcing the criminalization of homelessness. Both Kashifa, yourself, and Sandile described the nature of homelessness as people being economic refugees, if you like. And then the city of Cape Town, and I'm sure in KZN, the cities in KZN as well, are using bylaws. But Carlos, I want to make 2 points. I'd like you to respond to them. The first thing, of course, is that these bylaws are archaic. They are rooted in colonial era vagrancy laws, and the cities are capitalizing on that. The second point I'd like you to respond to is the notion of that because the cities are terrorizing legitimate homelessness, they are criminalizing entire families. Can you respond to that? Carlos, and then Sandile, we'll give Sandile a chance.
I think it's one of the points that I've made to the city. You know, we tend to, everything they do, it's as if the people they're dealing with in homelessness are already criminals. And unfortunately, they are creating the criminals. The people that are living on the street, everything they do, the bylaws they want to change now, for example, the two that they wanted to change, although they, as you say, are already archaic bylaws, they now want to make it illegal to actually be homeless. Because you cannot sit, you cannot lie, you cannot have a bag next to you. So all of these things in future, if they say to you, and this is the joke of it, they say to you that if they give you an alternative, which is, for example, to go to a shelter, and you say no, they're now going to put you in prison. Now, how can they give you an alternative if we don't have any shelter space available? There's no homes to give us an alternative. So where do they even come up with that concept of criminalizing? The problem was the whole situation is that you've got, where there be people that are, and I don't want to go into this thing about legitimizing certain homeless people and not other homeless people, because there are different reasons why people end up on the street. And so I don't think we should exclude those people. We've got the elderly, we've got people that are disabled, we've got people that come from a family abusive backgrounds. And so these people are all homeless. It's not only merely people that have lost their jobs. There are other socio-economic reasons for homelessness, and everybody is involved in this discussion. So all of these people have what can they do if they cannot avoid that situation? A lady gets abused. She has tried all the ladies' shelters. She can't get into a ladies' shelter. There's only a few. They can't go into a shelter where there's males and whatever because they're scared. Some people have been raped. I know ladies that have been raped so many times that they cannot even be within a few meters of a man, and they become, emotional. And so if you cannot provide those services, how can you expect people not to land up on the street and find a way of protecting themselves and at least having some kind of structure in their lives? And then law enforcement gets brought into the picture.
Thank you. So Sandile, you wanted to make a comment on that?
Yes, here in KZN, they are criminalizing Abahlali for occupying unused land, because when you're sitting in your house, we say it's our house. It's not a shack. It's an insult if someone say it's a shack, because it's my house. This is what I can afford. So when you're staying there with your bed, stove, and your pot, you are cooking with your children. Then when your children are coming from school, they'll come. They don't have a house. So they're violating Section 26, because most of the people had been abused during this pandemic. I remember last year in August, they evicted 28 women. They slept outside. It was very cold, and the government told us to stay inside the houses, indoors, where you can stay indoors when your house had been demolished. And they're sending those, they are having the private security companies who are coming and shoot the people. One of the guys died in August last year on that eviction. So we are getting help from SERI to apply for court interdict in order to stop those evictions.
Thank you for that. Kashifa, let's, Sisantile talks about the growing court case. In Cape Town, of course, we also have a growing court case. Is the Housing Assembly part of that class action? And just give us a sense of what that court case is and what you are challenging.
Okay, the court case that we involved with, that one is the judgment that was given where nobody must be evicted and the lockdown. No? So that case is still going on. So because two judges didn't agree on what is currently happening, because they've seen now the occupations is still continuing under this lockdown. So that case is continuing, but yet the judgment is standing and it's benefiting a lot of people, because what we've seen also, we take those judgments, but you do get some of law enforcement that don't comply to the judgment. Say no, but we don't know. But what we do is we tell communities, listen, here's the judgment. We make copies. We say, when they do come, you just show them the judgment, because that will also give them a sense of, hey, this one know what she's talking about, because our community is very uneducated. They don't know their rights also. But I want to come in what Carlo was saying about alternative accommodation. With the city with alternative accommodation, if you look at Blikkiesdorp, it was alternative accommodation. It's 10 years down the line and people are still there. Yeah. So that is a concentration camp also, where there's murders happening every single day. And even our young children are now also becoming like gangsters. They are drug dealers. Our young women are becoming now also the killing machine in that area. So drug lords are also using our elderly's pension and that. So there's a lot of things that's not good in these occupations, where they just throw you also and think it's okay. And then I also want to speak to the shelters that he was talking about. Shelters, in some shelters you have to pay even if you want to go there. And homeless people don't have money. And that is also problematic. There should be alternative accommodation. There's so many buildings that's available. Why can't those buildings be erected for our families and the homeless people to be placed there? But then I want to come also to the bylaws. With these bylaws that I want to implement also, there's one bylaw that's also unlawful occupation. The city wants that bylaw now to be implemented, but we are all put in our submission because we don't want that bylaws, because that bylaws speak to the city can evict anyone. It doesn't matter which structure or what structure is there, and they determine what is a home and what is a house.
Kashifa, can I just ask you to pause? I want us to come back to the discussion of bylaws. I'd like to bring Carlos in here, but we have to go to a break. To you at home, don't go away.
Welcome back. You're watching Workers World Labour News. I am Michaela Miller. We hope you're keeping warm and safe. Thanks for joining us. The South Africa Clothing and Textile Workers Union, affiliated with COSATU, has settled its 2021 and 2022 wage negotiations in the non-woven textile sector to secure a 5.5% wage hike for its members with effect from the 1st of July 2021. The backdated agreement is effective for a 12-month period until June 30th, 2022. The new collective agreement was concluded under the auspices of the National Textile Bargaining Council, with employers represented by the National Textile Manufacturers Association. The agreement includes improvements in long service awards. SACTU has also reached a breakthrough agreement with employers that all shop stewards of the trade union will be granted reasonable access to information and communication technology facilities in the workplace for their trade union activities. In addition to this, SACTU also settled its 2021 and 2022 wage negotiations in the home textile subsector with a 5.9% increase. The collective agreement also contains a new industry provision which guarantees full payment of the employer for the first 2 hours in the event of the unforeseen circumstances such as tornadoes, load shedding, fires, storms, floods and water cuts. The dismissed Spar Distribution Centre workers in Gqeberha who participated in the 6-week strike since March this year have been found guilty of gross misconduct and violating a court interdict against them. This comes after workers had demanded a salary increase of 8.1% and the employer was offering 3%. The workers said their distribution centre branch paid a salary of 5,300 per month while other centres paid about 12,500. The 36 workers were suspended with pay since 29th of April, pending the outcome of the CCMA proceedings. Only 3 of these employees' suspension were not upheld by the CCMA last month. The 3 were allowed to return to work. That's a wrap from the news. If you have any story you'd like to share with us, you can send a WhatsApp message or a voice note to 081 552 4551 or simply send an email to labour@wwmp.org.za. Standing by is Helga, who will now conclude this week's topic of discussion on homeless under COVID-19 conditions.
Thank you, Michaela. Kashifa, before the break, you were beginning to speak about the criminalizing because the city uses these bylaws. Continue.
Yeah, they want to pass this bylaw because even if you are driving me with your van and my materials, they will pick you up and confiscate my material and impound your vehicle, and you will also be taken to jail with me also. And what they're also saying is, if there's a land that is vacant and it doesn't belong to the city, the owner must close that and put up the signs. And if they don't do that, the city will do it, and they have to pay the city also. So all the spaces and pieces of land that is available, the city, it looks like the city want to close all the angles of any occupations happening. Because what they want is they don't want to go to court and have a court order. They want to pass that by. Even the PI Act won't even play in this. So, there's a lot of things that they want to do with unlawful occupation. So you will find so many people and that don't have a home. So they don't build houses. So where must people stay? So you know what I'm saying? Because if you look at the infrastructure, even within our communities, you will see drains and potholes and all those things. Nothing is happening within our communities. So if you don't look out for our communities, how can you not close up all the angles and you're not building our houses?
Can I bring, Kashifa, thank you, but let me bring Carlos into this because I want to just tease out this notion of the court cases because the city of Cape Town seems to be involved in quite a number of court challenges with regard to homelessness and its application of bylaws. Carlos, Ndafuna Ukwezi is going to challenge the constitutionality and the discriminatory impact of the municipal bylaws. That is now a second court case. Can you give us a sense of where we are with that court case? It seems that there was some kind of victory, as Kashifa says, because the court order to evict people stands. But there's also a second one that's going to challenge the constitutionality of the bylaws that the city is entrenching.
Correct, and I think that is where the city about 2 months ago put out an email requesting residents to respond to 5 basic, contraventions that homeless people usually are accused of, and basically they asked the public to comment, but the comments that they had to make had to be negative. That's basically the essence of their email. We then put out an email to the residents of Cape Town to answer to a questionnaire that would also feature 5 questions, but that would include good things about that they've seen homeless people do, etc. Because we felt it was immoral and totally ridiculous to be sending out an order, an instruction to the public to actually dehumanize homelessness in order to win the court case. We've also done a petition with this in this regard, because we are totally anti the whole idea of the bylaws changing. As I said, if you cannot provide those services, how are you expecting people to not do the things that they are doing, etc.? So it's not as if we're talking about committing crimes that are impacting on the residents of Cape Town negatively. It's a question of it might be inconvenient for some of the people that are living in specific areas that people are doing these things, be it a shack or be it something that they built up to protect themselves from the elements. But it's not a criminal act in terms of, I'm not going into your property as such and stealing your things. And so it's an inhumane, totally inhumane attitude to have when you, as everybody else has said, are not providing the services and the accommodation that is required for those people.
Thank you for that, Carlos. I want to just stay on this for one more minute before we get to Sisandile and Kashifa, if you can give me a very quick response, because we can't talk about homelessness and the role of the city in criminalizing and entrenching apartheid era spatial development, if you like Blikkiesdorp, without talking about Strandfontein. Now, Strandfontein was a response to protecting homeless people at the height of lockdown 1 in 2020. But officials have been held accountable for the expenditure of nearly 40 million rand as a result of that Strandfontein project. Kashifa, can you give us some response to where that project, Strandfontein concentration camp, as you call it, where that is now, and what has happened to those people that were interred there?
Yeah, so what we've seen is a lot of those families are back on the street again. They're not really placed in homes because, some people want to be on the street. Not that they want to be on the street, it's just that some have become now so used to the street also that they're on the street. But, it's not even a safe place to be. Most of the people, some of them went back to their families, that is what I know. But some of them, we don't really know where those are. But, we have even communities in Strandfontein that said, it's very hard. So the way people were treated and the way things has happened out there, because, it feels like, your children are really in jail. The thing is playing really out in your face, in front of you. It's just an inhumane way of the way things has happened there. But what I know is some of the families went back to their families, but some of them are back on the street. But it's because also of the pressure and the depression and all those things attached. Because even living on the street, people is going through a lot of things. There's no place that they can go to. When you look at a homeless person, people will think, hey, this is this dirty one. Hey, I don't want to be associated to these things, because that is also how they associate poor people. So what we've seen is also people are saying, I'm really so traumatized about this thing, but I don't want to go there because I don't look clean and I don't feel clean also, because you are getting turned away also going there. But we've seen a lot. We've spoken quite a lot to some of the homeless people that we also working with on the street, because we have comrades that's working with homeless people. Say this is our way of survival, and I think it is much better, even if it's not that safe, but it's much better because they like a community also on the street, taking care of each other. And
Thank you, Kashifa, for that. I understand that there is a different way that you need to survive when you live on the streets. To you at home, don't go away. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation around COVID-19 and homelessness.
Call in home-based workers. Do you work from home, in a cooperative or other group in your community? Does your group make clothes, crafts, and more? We want to hear from you. The United Nations International Labour Organization is making a database of home-based workers. This information will be used to push for recognition and support from the government, better working conditions, and access to new markets. Call now to have your voice heard. Please send an SMS to 40774 and we will call you back.
Welcome back. Carlos, before the break, Kashifa was describing Strandfontein, but you, in fact, you were at Strandfontein in those early days. Can you very quickly, because I do need to go to Sandile, can you very quickly give us an impression of what was going on at Strandfontein?
Well, Strandfontein, in my 52 years of existence, was the worst experience of my life. And so most of you might not know this, but I was actually on the street before COVID. And so I'm sitting here partly because of Strandfontein, because you either took the bad that happened there and lived it, or you did something about it. And we rose up and we formed a committee, and that's how the Homeless Action Committee came about. And obviously, I have taken a positive thing out of Strandfontein, although there is nothing positive about Strandfontein whatsoever. Strandfontein to me was taking a photo within a moment in time, and everything that is wrong with the way the city handles homelessness, and not only the city, the provincial government handles homelessness, is caught in this one photograph. So you get the law enforcement aspect, the fact that we had one medical practitioner there, we had 15 nurses, and you had 300 law enforcement officers. This was supposed to be a medical facility and not a prison. We arrived there. The very first question that we were asked, instead of being, we said we were going to be screened and this is a medical facility. First question that I was asked and everybody else was asked was, have you ever been arrested? Which police station? And so eventually when they had to bring down Strandfontein because of the amount of court cases that were being leveled against the city, we actually took them to court in order to be accommodated post Strandfontein. And despite having a court order in our hands, which is valid till today, we ended up dumped on the streets, not accommodated. So we fought that again, and within a month, they accommodated 96 of the 168 that were meant to be accommodated. The balance are the people that we are now looking after. So we actually formed an organization, and we are keeping those people in accommodation. Although they are still very much under the City of Cape Town's, the court order that was issued against the City of Cape Town.
Thank you for that, Carlos. I want to just change tack now and go back to KZN. So Sandile, we're talking now specifically about homelessness and COVID-19. Did the government put any support systems in place particularly during the winter months, which we know in certain parts of KZN can get really, really cold? So was there any support systems like we saw the City of Cape Town trying to do?
Yes, there was a support system during while we were in level 5. Level 5, 4, and 3. And now the homeless people, they say they are not satisfied with their services because they are having a shelter next to Durban Station, and there's another shelter at Dennis Hill Center. So, these people are addicted to drugs. So when they are inside the center, they're only getting food. They don't get money to buy drugs and cigarettes. So they were complaining. They said the food is not nice. They're not satisfied with their services. That's why they decided to go to the street for begging. And some of them are being, those who are in the streets, who are not in the shelters, are being fed by mosquitoes. The mosquitoes are feeding them.
Okay. Carlos, I want to come back to you again. It seems like before I bring Kashifa in, earlier on in our conversation, you spoke about shelters and how the city is almost don't want residents to directly support homeless people, but what they call responsible giving. No, just give us a sense, because you had a very clear opinion on that.
Yes, well, to me, the idea and the concept, when you're talking about individuals like Zandile was talking about just now, and that's not all homeless people, there are drug addicts and want drugs, etc. But when you have that, then giving responsibly makes sense as a concept. But when you've got a city where you've got 14,000 homeless people, plus minus, and you offering, as a city, you're offering 2,000 beds, and you've got 12,000 in balance. You cannot ask. And all the funds that you're collecting through Give Responsibly go towards those 2,000. Okay, because if you look at the SNAP scan gets directed to a specific organization within the funded organizations. So the unfunded organizations like ourselves and the people living on the street do not get a cent. I mean, we have got an organization that's has helped 103 people in the short time we've been around, and we don't get a single cent from the city or the province or the national government or anything. So to say give responsibly and just give to the funded organizations make no sense, because what happens to all the other hundreds of organizations that are involved, as well as the 14,000, the 12,000 on the street that are not being provided for? Who's going to provide for them? You take away that provision, you're going to get violence, and you're going to get, they're scared of criminality. That's when they're going to get the criminal element coming out. Because if you take away people's food, what are they going to do if they need to survive?
We're coming to the last few minutes of our show, and I want to just do a roundabout, starting with Kashifa. Kashifa, in the next period, what are the major campaign elements that the Housing Assembly is going to tackle, and what are the big struggles that lay ahead now?
Okay, one of the campaigns that we're going to take up is also, the city have a waiting list. No? Now, what we've seen is so many people, the city saying so many people is on the waiting list. And so many people are waiting for houses, but you see so many elderly is still not in a house, but yet they say they're working from a waiting list also. So we're busy working in the communities, go door to door, check on families, how many staying and how long are you on a waiting list, because I think that is important also, because the city is saying that they are building these houses and people do get this. Yes, we know some people sell their houses, but we think we need to do that campaign, checking, going around, how many developments was done, how many money was spent into those things, how many did the city use in our communities, what has happened to those things. So we also need to be proactive in saying, this is what we found and this is what we see that the city is not doing. Because the city is also saying they want to have an inclusionary city with these houses, the flats and things that they are building with the developers. But what we've seen with that is the poor is not going to be included in these things, because it's very nice. We had discussion also with them, with Mfunakwazi and with the city also, where they are saying is now, when the developers going to start, they're going to include, say, if it's 1,000 flats or 900 flats, 100 is going to the low-income in housing. But we know our people will never fit in there, because developers will only benefit from these things. Our people will be placed at the outskirts of the city all the time.
Exactly, Kashifa. It's again relegating poor people to the margins of the city.
Exactly.
Sandile, Abashlali, what in the next period are you going to be dealing with?
What are you trying to do? We are teaching our communities to engage, because going to the streets, marching and all won't help if you don't start by engaging. Because the problem is that we don't get the waiting list. They're saying they got the waiting list, but they don't give us. When we're saying we want to see that waiting list, because we want to know when are you going to build houses for that settlement. What number? Because they always say we are jumping the queue when we say we want houses, but they don't give us the waiting list. But we are encouraging our communities leaders to engage.
Thank you.
Before they go to the street.
Carlos, the Housing Action Committee in the next period, and you've got very little time. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to respond.
We've got a campaign called the Homeless Not Voters campaign, and the
Sorry, Carlos, I dropped you there for a moment. Can you repeat the homeless not?
Voters,
Okay.
and the Homes Not Handcuffs campaigns going on. The Homes Not Handcuffs is very current. That is about the criminalization of homelessness, to do a campaign where we elevate what it actually means to do the bylaw infringement and that type of thing that the city is bringing in, that it's actually going to cause more criminals than take away from criminalization. So we are sending people to jail that should not be in jail.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our guests, Carlos Makwita, Kashifa Ahmad, and Zandile Nzibande. Thank you so much to all of you, and all the best with all your individual organizational campaigns. And to you at home, from myself, Helga, and the crew here at the Workers' World Labour Show, till next time.